And now let's get to a bonus episode. That's right, I said a bonus episode of Locked On NHL in Utah. We're going to talk some player signings. We're going to talk some recent hires, all of what's other updates that we might have missed on Locked On NHL in Utah.
You are Locked On NHL in Utah, your daily podcast on all things hockey in Utah, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Robyn Leonio, alongside Tom Callahan. We got a rare 6th episode for the week coming, you guys. We usually only give you guys 5 episodes a week, but you know what? We enjoyed giving you guys as much content as we could this week. We decided, why not throw in a 6th one for you guys?
It's a mini episode.
It's a little mini one, absolutely.
Not for evil, a mini episode.
Yep, a little mini episode. Not a full 30-minute length, but we got to show it. We got some discussion still to bring you guys, as the Utah Hockey Club has got some updates that they dropped earlier this week on player signings. We got some official signings with some staff members. And let's start with that staff member, Tom, because we mentioned it earlier briefly, but I think either earlier this week or last week, it wasn't official then. It is official now that the Utah Hockey Club has hired Chris Armstrong to be their, is he officially president of hockey ops, or what's?
Yes, president of hockey operations.
President of hockey operations, which is a position that the Coyotes never had, which is honestly really interesting given that, I would be real, I think Shane Doan should have had that job a while back ago, but somebody decided not to give it to him. Over in Utah, they finally got a president of hockey operations and Chris Armstrong, which, by the way, no relation to Bill Armstrong.
I feel like we need to change our name to Armstrong if we want to get hired by this team. But so Armstrong also is going to be the alternate governor, Robyn.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that he's coming over with a lot of experience on the entertainment and sports side of things. He's got some pretty good relationships. It's interesting, for a place called Wasserman, if people have heard about that. He was the executive VP for talent, innovation, strategic development, and did a lot of contracts for hockey execs. So he's been involved in that world. And I think that by having that's really kind of helped him out. And also he manages Utah native Tony Finau, which I thought was pretty cool. Pro golfer. If you're a golf fan, you know Tony. So who actually was in the running for a while at the U.S. Open here not too long ago. But it's a great signing. And I think that he's a guy who, because of that previous experience, has been around not only the contractual side, but already may have those connections and that network built within the hockey operations departments around the league, and some of the guys that are involved with that. I think it's a pretty solid hire for them.
And I will add this too. I'm glad you have a position like that in there, because without a president of hockey ops, I feel like the general manager ends up having to have more conversations with the owner, and then it kind of creates a little bit too much. I like having a hands-on owner, but sometimes if you don't have a good owner, it can create some animosity, some not fun, whatever it might be. That just adds a little extra stopgap, essentially, because Bill Armstrong is now going to be answering to Chris Armstrong. Chris Armstrong is making a lot of more of the business decisions of it all. But at the end of the day, a lot of it goes through him. Bill Armstrong still has a lot to say about how the team is made, but this kind of cleans things up a little bit.
And in a world where the cap is so important, you need people who are capologists involved in this. There can be like an assignation of roles even within that when it comes to, okay, let's kind of do some financial planning here for free agents. Let's do financial planning for our restricted guys. Let's do some planning for our entry-level guys. And so I think all of that is important. And when you can divide the responsibilities and conquer, I think it does free up, as you say. A GM needs to have one set of conversations. A director of hockey operations is having a different set of conversations. And in some teams, I think the roles get conflated a little bit.
Yeah.
There are some teams that can't figure out the hierarchy. But, as long as there's clearly defined roles here, I think it's a good way to go about it.
And I feel like that's kind of what the idea is with the hiring of Chris Armstrong is here, especially at the idea of making him alt governor. He is that essentially that next in command, where Bill Armstrong is going to be looking to him and figure out, all right, here's how we're dividing things, and it's gonna help a lot. It's gonna help a huge amount in an ideal world. And again, I say that because we're not in the room. We can't tell you exactly what's being said there, what's actually going to be done. But in an ideal world, that's what we're gonna see.
And again, it'll probably save a couple gray hairs for some of these guys. And there's going to be times, ownership will feel the need to step in, or they have a directive they want followed. I mean, after all, they have the purse strings, and there will be limits set on spending, whether that's to the cap or not. But you have to be able to project all that. And then you have to be able to project numbers. And then, of course, we live in a world with what I call fancy stats. And so now you need a department for that. And there's the front office has grown so much.
Oh yeah.
From the game, even 30 years ago, I was going to say 50, but even 30 years ago, totally different way of operating now. It's not so much the, phone calls, handshakes, and, you get together at league meetings and you have a couple of beers with the guys from around the league. It's totally different now. The players are different. The coaches are different. And the front offices, the teams that are advancing with the times and being successful are the ones that are advancing as well.
I was even going to say that there has been significant leaps since the, since the two lockouts that we've seen in the last 20 years.
Well, especially once the cap was introduced, it was a totally different world because now that mattered. Before, it was just some GMs had a wide open bank account and were just cackling with insanity as they handed out these crazy deals. That's not a thing as much as it used to be. Some of them still cackle when they hand out crazy deals.
I mean, now you take a look at the parity in the league that's happened since the cap has been in place.
Sure.
It's real. I mean, look, you're not going to previously, right before it was implemented, you had like the Red Wings dynasty where they would just dominated the 90s, right? Like, you're not going to see that anymore. I mean, you came close. You had the Lightning, but
Tampa Bay was right up there. Yeah,
they were right up there. They came really darn close. Even the Penguins and the Blackhawks had formidable close to dynasties in the 2010s. But nothing compared to what we've seen in the past.
Well, I don't know that you're going to see anybody win 4 in a row again, or 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
I think those days are gone. However, you're going to see teams making deep runs 4 years in a row.
Oh, 100%.
This Panthers team, they'll be back again. They'll be sniffing around the final again next year, win it or not this year. So, but that is, as you mentioned, what happens. Like, you look at the Lightning had, stash a couple of guys on LTIR and then they bring them back in the playoffs when there's no salary cap anymore. I mean, there's some management to that. So, and some guys had to go. Some players could not stay, and yet they found a way to kind of repeat their success. So it really, the cap has changed the game. The athletes have changed the game. The game itself has changed when they decided to legislate it differently. And it's continuously evolving technology, advanced statistics. Again, you have to change and transform, or you shrivel up and die by the side of the road.
Do you have personally thinking of when this hire was made, any single hope you want to see Utah make out of now bringing in a president of hockey ops? What do you want to see from Utah?
I don't think that I have particular aspirations for the role outside of, again, like I said earlier, when teams don't have the lines clearly demarcated between the positions. That's what I hope internally they're doing, so that they know what their lanes are and they're able to work within those lanes. And you develop your working relationship across that, but you don't want, your GM or your president of hockey ops one, not sure of who's handling something, but two, certainly not fighting over who should control something. So that's my hope, is just, hey, clearly paint those lines on the road so everybody knows where they need to be.
Certainly. We still got more to talk to on this bonus episode of Locked On NHL in Utah. We're going to talk about some recent signings made. A couple of players have signed contracts to the Utah Hockey Club, and we'll talk about those right after this.
All right. Well, let's start with a moment to bring up one of our partners. Now, are you a mobile game person? If you like to play games on your phone, I think a lot of people do. It's a great way to pass time, or even on your tablet. I've got one for you. It's called Mobile Game Ultimate Hockey GM. Okay, so if you've ever dreamed of becoming an NHL general manager, I will admit I have. I've wanted to manage a franchise or two in my day. And maybe you think you could do a better job than Bill Armstrong. Maybe you want to be GM. Maybe you want to be director of hockey ops. Who knows? Well, your dream can come true. And this game is most definitely for you. You manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, and lead it to glory. Lift the Stanley Cup by hiring the right coaches and staff, trading players or draft picks, navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. As a Utah fan, you know there's no offseason. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances. And that's why I think you're going to love this game. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and it's playable offline. So play on the go when you want, and you don't have to be connected to the internet. By the way, Locked On Network listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise just by using the promo Locked On NHL. That's LOCKEDON NHL in the game store. Pop that promo code in there. Make sure you do that when you check it out. Download the game by visiting hockeygm.app, hockeygm.app, or, of course, you can find it in your mobile store of choice. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today.
And I also want to tell you guys about one of our other partners, eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's keep things going on this bonus episode of Locked On NHL in Utah. We got some contract signings, Tom, to talk about because 3 players have signed their entry-level deals to the Utah Hockey Club, including, I want to start off with this guy because I think that's how you pronounce it, Noel Nord, the first player to officially sign a contract with Utah.
Which is kind of a cool thing to celebrate. So it's an entry-level contract, 6'2", 200-pounder, 15 points, 6 PIMs in 50 regular season games and 13 playoff games with Brynäs IF. So it helps his team. He's coming off a championship win, which is fantastic. Had 22 points, 4 PIMs in 15 games with the junior under-20 team. So that's also pretty cool. So obviously coming over from Sweden, it's going to be a little bit different, but signing an entry-level deal means that he's going to have a chance here. He'll be in prospects camp. You'll get a chance to get a look at him if he can get over here, and I'm sure he will. I'm sure that's in the works. But the first guy ever, he's the answer to a trivia quiz.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be like, also just imagine just like maybe the bragging is like, yeah, you know what? I'm the first guy to sign a contract with Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah, I mean that's a cool thing, right? And I mean, hey, to all your buddies back home, it's like, hey, I signed an NHL entry level deal. What are you doing? Yeah, grilling out. Okay, I mean that's cool. I'll be over for the food, but no, seriously, like congratulations, and it gets the ball rolling, right? I think that's something that Utah fans have been waiting for is to can we please just get some guys and know a little bit more of who's going to be here and their ELCs and all that. So we're getting a couple more of those rolling in now.
Yeah, now entry-level contracts are complicated. I'll mention, well, I'm pretty sure we'll have an episode, discussing how entry-level contracts specifically work, because I feel like, or how contracts really work, because entry-level contracts are incredibly complicated, including, how they slide over if they don't play a year or whatever it might be. It's so much to it. We're not going to do that today. If you're interested in learning about it, maybe let us know. We'll talk, and we'll certainly get to that maybe during the free agency period, as we can explain how contracts work. We do a little teaching episode to you guys. Well, we can definitely do that for you. But let's get to talking about the other guys, Tom, because two other guys signed entry-level deals as well, besides just Noel Noor being the first guy. I mentioned his name earlier, I think at the beginning of the month. It wasn't announced officially until just this last week, and Julian Lutz, coming on over from, I believe he last season he played for the Green Bay Gamblers, right?
Yes.
In the USHL. So he's coming down from there. I think he also played internationally in, was it Germany before that? Something like that.
Yes. So German native, 6'2", 194. He did it. He was actually 12th in scoring in the USHL last season. So he had 24
Very
goals,
impressive.
68 points. Yeah. And 71 penalty minutes. So he's got a little bit of sandpaper in the game. And I like that. So 68 points in 50 games doesn't hurt my feelings. And so, I mean, a little bit of playoff experience in there, as you mentioned, with Germany. He's gone to the World Junior Championship, has that experience on the international stage, originally drafted by the Coyotes, second round in 22. Number 43 overall. So he is under his ELC now. And again, if a player signs an ELC, doesn't guarantee them being on the team or anything like that,
Right.
but it does get them now in with Utah
in the door, in the system officially.
Correct.
Like rather than a quote reserve, you are now contracted by them, and you can be called up at any moment.
Right.
So that's certainly one thing to keep in mind, and I feel like this was a long thing coming, especially after watching how Lutz has played just in the last couple seasons. If you watched either him in the USHL or you watched him in the World Junior Championships, or even I think even in the World Championships, you're like, if you watch the dude, you're like, all right, he's got something to provide. If Utah doesn't sign him this season, then maybe they know something I don't, because he looks like he deserves it at this point.
Well, and I mean, at a certain point, if you have an interest in trying to bring a player into the system and maybe seeing if they have what it takes, you do have to sign them to a contract at some point. Otherwise, they eventually, 2 years after you draft them, their rights expire and they can walk away. So
Liam Kirk a couple years ago.
Right. And so if you don't get that guy under contract, now depending on how old they are, they can either re-enter the draft, which some guys have been drafted twice, or if they're beyond draft age, then they just simply become free agents. And that's happened a couple of times. I'm sure people remember the Jimmy VC sweepstakes and things like that we've heard happen. So, Danny DeKaiser, I think, was another one. But so stuff like that does happen. That's why these ELC deals are important to finally get guys in the door, especially if you're drafted in 22. This is 24. Now you got to make something happen here.
You certainly do, and it's we'll definitely have to see what he provides. I'm sure we mentioned earlier, just in the previous episode, that a player like him, and even the other guy we mentioned already, another one we mentioned it's a little bit, they're going to most likely be at prospect development camp coming up in just a little over a week from now, starting on July 1st through 5th, once again over in Park City. So if you want to get a chance to see these prospects, make sure to get to those little scrimmages that they got on the 5th. If you got nothing else to do, if you got nothing else going on that weekend. But let's finish off with the final player, Tom. Trying to think, why do I just had him too. Oh yeah, he had Patrick Koch.
Yep, 1 year. It's a two-way deal. League minimum salary at the top, $775. Last year spent most of his time with Tucson, 63 games with the Roadrunners, 1 goal, 14 assists, 15 points, 97 penalty minutes, which is a respectable amount, especially in the American League. Did get his cup of coffee in with the Coyotes last year. By the way, if you don't know what that phrase means, it might be self-explanatory, but if a guy gets a cup of coffee in the show, it means he played a game or two. So he had his cup of coffee last year. He also played with Slovakia at the 2024 World Championship, had 4 points and 6 PIMs there for the Slovaks. So, you know what? He's a guy, again, some international seasoning. Also was at the 2023 World Championship with Slovakia. And again, had 4 points in 7 games, which actually led all Slovakian defensemen in scoring. But a little bit older player, started over in the Extraliga, has made his way to North America. And as we talk about, a lot of times we see sometimes a European player coming over. It takes them a little longer to adapt to the North American rink, the North American style, and they tend to make that leap a little bit later in their career than maybe guys who grew up playing in North America. So that is the hope. I hope that we are able to, see him make that leap this year.
Certainly, and I feel like you could out of a lot of players. My hope, and again, this is just me just thinking of all the certain possibilities, because we've seen players turn out and become a player like this, where like I want to see him actually make an impact rather than just be a perpetual black ace, or black ace or quadruple, like what I referred to him in the past, quadruple A player, where they're good enough to be up in the NHL, but they prefer to keep him in the AHL for reasons one way or another.
Right. It could be contracts. It could be, guys at the top need playing time and you can keep a younger player down or things like that. There are a lot of reasons.
Took me a while, by the way, until I actually first heard the term black ace. Like, I've always said quadruple A, and then someone's like, you mean black ace? And I'm like,
well, black ace is specific to the playoffs.
True.
A black ace is a player in the playoffs. A quadruple A player is a guy. I'll give you a great example. And this is going back a ways. I would be shocked if people actually remembered, but the Syracuse Crunch had a goaltender who was amazing in the American League. JF LeBay was Mr. AHL goaltender, like just dominant, could never stick in the NHL. That's what a quadruple A player is. Incredibly good, too good for the American League, but for some reason never sticks in the NHL. That's quadruple A. A black ace is someone who comes in and is on the practice squad for the playoffs. So just want to clear that up. I don't know if the person who told you that understood that or not. Yeah, no, could have been a little bit of maybe like a lost in translation on maybe how I explained quadruple A to them, whatever it might have been, but who knows? They could have been one or the other. Yeah, no, those are kind of different terms. Quadruple A is a guy who's too good for the American Hockey League but never sticks in the NHL. And the same thing in baseball. Too good for AAA baseball, doesn't ever seem to quite stick in the majors.
Fair enough. But yeah, I mean, my hope is to see Coke get a better look. I always hope that out of any player. Right. Especially too. And I think a lot of that comes from the beginning of my career covering the Roadrunners, seeing a lot of those guys make it to the Coyotes in years, for example, in year one that I watched, seeing, Dylan Strome make it to the NHL, seeing Lawson Krause make it to the NHL, seeing Connor Garland make it to the NHL. So many of these guys. And I'm like, I want to see more. I want to root these guys on so bad. And again, that might just be because of that, because of, I root for them because of that connection I have with the AHL.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a great selling point for anyone who is in a minor league hockey market, whether it's the East Coast League or the American Hockey League. You could be watching the Stars of tomorrow, and that's the most exciting part of it. And these guys are working hard every night. They work their butts off because they have a dream too. So just something to keep in mind if you're thinking about going to a minor league game. Always worth it, in my opinion, to go check out minor league sports. I love it.
100%. Any final thoughts on these players that we haven't discussed before we head and close off this bonus episode?
Well, only in the perspective of looking ahead. So this is just the start. You're going to see more deals coming down. And again, it's important for anybody in the 2022 draft class that wasn't signed to get an ELC. Otherwise, they're either re-entering the draft or they're out. So that's important. You're going to see a little bit of that. But the other thing this does too is as teams start adding those contracts onto the pile, just know there's a finite number that teams are allowed to sign. And so there's also a finite number you're allowed to keep up in the NHL, and then some guys get bumped down to the American League or go back to junior, whatever. We're going to start to see those numbers start to come into play. And now that there is a director of hockey ops to help the general manager with that, again, this is a big part of the planning session. It's going to go into the draft and then into free agency. And this is all part of the roadmap that they're building right now. So I think you'll see maybe a couple more signings before we get to the draft a week from now. But boy, this is going to be a real exciting next couple of weeks, right through, I'd say, to the end of the first week of free agency.
And we're certainly going to see a lot more. You're right. More contract signings. We're going to see some trades because we're already starting to see a little bit of trades and waiver wire pickups leading up to the draft. And there's just a lot of NHL action, just so much going on that if you are a day behind, you feel like a million years behind at this point.
Yep. So you might as well keep it locked on right here. We will keep you up to date.
We will certainly keep you up to date. We'll have opportunities for you to stay up to date too, coming up shortly. Be sure to stay subscribed here on YouTube, as well as following us on X. We got some awesome insider opportunities for you guys to stay connected with us as we catch you up to date on all things Utah Hockey Club. But in the meantime, if you like what you heard on this episode, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, and again, subscribe if you have yet to already. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to also hit the notification bell. That way you are notified every time a new episode is released. Interact with us again on social media. We are on the app formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, at @LO_NHL Utah. I am at Robyn_Leano. Tom Callahan is at Callahan on Air. Interact with us, ask a question you might have. We might answer right back on a future episode of the Locked On NHL in Utah podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to this bonus episode, and we'll see you guys next time.